TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. It's your two friendly neighborhood philosophers here. Well, your friendly neighborhood philosopher, D. Wood, and your not-so-friendly philosopher, Inspiring Philosophy.
Yeah, if you would have asked me 5 years ago why I would be one of the leading opponents of child marriage online, I would have told you were crazy. That's not what I do. But apparently I have to because these Dawa apologists can't shut up about how much it's okay to go after children. It's wow.
Isn't that, I mean, it's just, wow. This is what Islam did. If I didn't know anything else about Islam, apart from the fact that it forces people to have to constantly explain why it's not a good idea for grown men to have sex with little girls. Wow. If that was the only thing I knew about Islam, I would think that we got a serious, serious problem here. If you go back 15 years, the standard response was, nope, never happened. This is made up. It's a lie of the kuffar. And then we had to spend years saying, no, we're not lying. This is what's in your sources. And then as soon as they couldn't lie anymore about it being in their sources, then it became, and it's wonderful, it's good. Oh, only a secular leftist person would object to this sort of thing. And
yeah, and most people throughout history, surprisingly.
The moment a girl reaches puberty, she's a fully grown woman and she's ready. She's ready to have children. What's the problem with that?
Well, everything. All the science shows that it is problematic. I mean, any girl under the age of 15 will more likely to die in childbirth, more likely to develop obstetric fistula, doesn't have adequate parenting skills, so we lead to higher rate of infant death for child brides, higher rates of depression, suicidal thoughts, mental disorders. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on because this is horrible.
So in short, when he says the moment a girl reaches puberty, she's ready. She's fully cooked. That's like saying, hey, I put all the batter and stuff in my cake and then I stuck it in the pan, and as soon as I stuck it in the oven, it's ready. No, it's not. You can't find a Dawa guy who understands this at all. It's all old enough to bleed, old enough to breed.
Yeah, which is, we can get to some details later. Even people in the ancient world didn't think like that. Some sources talk about, or some historians argue that ancient people actually were marrying girls off late teens, early 20s, because they understood that girls were more likely to die in childbirth if they were not fully developed. And this is what the historical record seems to show. The Jews in Babylon seem to have been marrying younger, like early teens. They were the exception, Jews in Babylon. Jews in Palestine were marrying later. But they were the exception. Most people in the ancient world were marrying much older. But even with the Jews in Babylon, they were still far better than Muhammad because they were still waiting to at least 12. Muhammad had to get right in there at 9.
So this is how everything started. We didn't pick this dispute with the Muslim Cowboy. He just started defending child marriage and pedophilia on Twitter. So went sort of like this. This is this is him talking about us coming after him and so on. So someone said, yes, explain how is having sex with a 9-year-old girl is okay by anthropology, biology, or psychology? Yes, if she is a woman, and anthropologically women have become women at 9 all over the world. You really need to study, champ. So he's encouraging people to study.
Yeah, he should study up. That is just so blatantly false in so many ways. It's clear he has not even studied at all. And we'll demonstrate he's not even reading the very books he puts in front of him later in the stream.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, this is another feature of Dawa, is to just make stuff up or to just say stuff or repeat a lie and then just say, if you know this, if you studied, see, you don't study. And so, yeah, we'll find out what happens if you can actually read words off a page, which is an ability sadly lacking in the Dawa community. So someone asked him, bro, is this you? Saying, hey, explain how sex with a 9-year-old girl is okay. And he said, yep, it's me. We support our prophet's marriage to Aisha at 9. No big deal. She was a woman through and through. 9 years old. She was a woman through and through. No one has ever defended child marriage. He's saying it's not child marriage. It's marriage between a man and a woman. It's not permissible to consummate with children, bright guy. So he's
Well,
saying,
that's just false. Daniel literally agreed to debate me. Daniel Hakikichu agreed to debate me on child marriage. So
yeah,
he was defending child marriage. So
yes,
he doesn't even
everyone,
realize what his own Dawa community is doing.
yeah, everyone calls it child marriage. The Muslim cowboy gets this brilliant idea. Well, if I just say it's a different word, that will make it all different. Muslim cowboy, you could call a 1-year-old and just say, I say it's a woman. Now it's okay to bang her. And you'd still be a sick, twisted pervert. You know what I mean? A woman is a woman when they hit puberty. Making a certain age a number is arbitrary and makes no sense. Are we just arbitrarily putting a number in there, IP? We're just saying, hey, we're just going to pick this number, 18.
Yeah, no, that comes from that is a strong historical precedence of societies moving girls closer to that age over time. We see it in the Middle Ages with Kim Phillips points out in her book Medieval Maidens that kings would marry off their daughters, but at times they'd be like, hey, you can't consummate this till 16 or 18. So there was an historical precedence already moving in that direction. And modern medical research backs it up because girls don't complete puberty until the ages of 15 to 17. So it makes sense we grant the status of adulthood the following age.
There's one community that refused to get this. When I say one community, I don't mean all Muslims. I mean the followers of Muhammad who are actually believe that he's the pattern of conduct and that he is the one who makes decisions like this. When is the appropriate age to have sex with a little girl? The followers who take Muhammad's example very seriously tend to have a problem here because they keep defending child marriage. And then they say things like this, making a woman is a woman when they hit puberty. That's false. Puberty is a process. It starts when you start puberty. When you hit puberty, you have entered a process that is going to take several years.
And also, you got to notice something else about this. The ancient world didn't say this. This is just false. A lot of ancient writers said a woman is a woman when she starts her period. Puberty starts before the period. So you can have signs of puberty before you even get your period. Mm-hmm. Now, Daniel Hakikichu in my debate even admitted you could actually consummate the marriage with a woman who's not, or a girl who's not had her period, because that's permissible in Islam. And so this guy's saying, well, no, they are a woman the moment they get puberty. That wasn't, even the ancient people knew that was stupid. They at least pushed it back to the age of monarchy. And in the ancient world, monarchy was roughly around the age of 16 due to poor nutrition.
Yeah. And so multiple problems here. A couple more real quick. It's funny how these kuffar equate marriage and rape. I knew they were dumb as crap, but this is next level. Because they call it. Yeah. Why do they call it? Why do we call it raping children? One, because the child wouldn't know what she's even consenting to. She doesn't understand if it hasn't been really broken down to her what's going to happen. And most of us would say that a child is not capable of giving consent, right? Like Daniel's hypothetical 11-month-old baby scenario that you brought up to him. And, he was concerned about whether you'd have parental consent or not. But according to his own definition, anyone who has any signs of puberty, which, as you showed in that debate, can happen as early as 11 months. I mean, I would hope that Daniel, and here's the thing, I don't think he would. I want to say, I hope these guys would understand that an 11-month-old baby is not capable of consent. The 11-month-old baby can't even talk, let alone reason and decide whether she wants to be married and to have sex. And yet these guys, following their definitions, couldn't say that. They'd have to say, nope. You don't need consent of an 11-month-old baby if you want to start having sex with her. You need parental consent. And that goes back to Fareed saying, how can anyone call it rape if there's parental consent? There's no concept of violating a little girl.
Apparently in Islam, there's no such thing as marital rape.
No, I've seen Muslim scholars make fun of that because in Islam, their idea seems to be having sex against the will of someone you're not allowed to have sex with. Like, that's what rape is. It has to be someone you're not allowed to have sex with. If you're forcing yourself on someone that you're allowed to have sex with, it's just not rape. They don't count it as rape.
So this is what Islam thinks of women, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a woman and you get married, your husband can do whatever he wants. He can rape you. Because Islam, according to them, this is how they respect women.
And it's, I mean, that comes from the Quran, Surah 2, verse 223, that your wives are a tilth, plow them however you want. And that was in response. Once you know the historical background, it's clear what that's talking about, because there were women who were refusing to have sex with their husbands in certain positions. They're saying, we're not doing that. And so it got brought to Muhammad, and Allah's response is, your wives are your tilth. They're your field for plowing. Plow them however you want. And so what's it saying? It's saying it doesn't matter if your wife wants to or not. Just do whatever you want to her. The Muslim Cowboy, nope, children are off limits. People are asking about, hey, so you're saying it's okay to marry children? He says, nope, children are off limits. The key is defining childhood. Yes, you can just define childhood. It's different at different times and locations. So his view is once a girl has reached puberty, even if she's an 11-month-old baby and she reaches puberty, then she is a fully grown, fully developed woman, and you can start having sex with her. And one of the things we pointed out in the other live stream was, even if you granted everything this sick pedophile is saying, and you granted that, yes, any sign of puberty is a sign that she's a fully grown woman and it's okay to start having sex with her. Even if you granted all of that, Aisha hadn't reached puberty, and puberty is not a requirement in the Muslim sources. Puberty is not a requirement according to Allah or to Muhammad. The Quran allows grown men to have sex with prepubescent girls. It allows grown men to marry, have sex with, and divorce girls all before they've reached puberty, and to pass the girl on to another man who, after waiting 3 months, he can have sex with her and he can divorce her. And a girl could be 7 years old and have had 5 husbands with no problem, according to the Quran. And so that's the Quran. And then Muhammad, of course, married Aisha, who was 6, and consummated the marriage when she was 9. And according to the Muslim sources, she had not reached puberty. She had not reached puberty. That's why she was allowed to continue playing with dolls. That's not according to us. That's according to Islam. So this is the sort of thing we're dealing with, where he doesn't understand what he's talking about on multiple levels. He doesn't know how puberty works. He doesn't understand what a woman is. And he doesn't even understand what his own sources say. Everything he's saying is wrong. And yet he's just getting started, because we've got the video we're going to be going through today. And it's questionable whether he is literate at all. And guys, when I say it's questionable if he's literate, I'm not using that as an insult. The best thing, the nicest we could be in this discussion is to assume that he's illiterate. That would be the nicest. Because if he can read, and he said what these sources say that we're about to put on the screen, if he said what he said about these sources and he is capable of reading, then the conclusion is that he is a flat out liar. It's not that he's stupid and doesn't understand what puberty is and doesn't understand what his own religion teaches after being in it for 10 years and being a Muslim apologist, and still doesn't know what his sources say. It's not just that he's wrong or ignorant. It's that he's absolutely, indisputably lying, which would be all too common in dawah, sadly. The disbelievers think we should be ashamed of some things in Islam. There is not a single thing our prophet did that I myself wouldn't do. This is submission. This is the way. Unfortunately, we got him to modify this issue, because he was saying there's not a single thing our prophet did that I myself wouldn't do. So it got brought up to him. What about things that only Muhammad was allowed to do, like having 9 wives? You're not allowed to do that as a Muslim. That was just for him. So he acknowledged that he wouldn't do certain things that only Muhammad was allowed to do. And he acknowledged that since there are laws in the U.S. that Muhammad wasn't under, that he would have to obey the laws of this country. But then it started getting brought up to him, even with those modifications. You had the next Zakir Naik asked him, well, would you walk around in clothes covered in semen? And the Muslim Cowboy blocked him and called down Allah's curses upon him for saying that, which is a perfectly valid question, because he's literally the one who keeps bringing this up, that he'll do anything. And I asked him on Twitter, I didn't see if he responded, but I doubt he did. I just asked him on Twitter that since water was brought to Muhammad from the well of Buddha, and that had used menstrual rags, dead dogs, and that's where people would dump their buckets of waste, their toilet buckets. And Muhammad said water is clean and is not made impure by anything. I said, well, wouldn't you be willing to do that then? That's not breaking any laws, and it's not something that only Muhammad was allowed to do. And so this just gives rise to some very, very, very weird situations, and that brings us to today. Where what was it yesterday? Did he post that video yesterday?
Yeah, I believe it was it was definitely yesterday or the day before, where he is clearly trying to do the typical Muslim knee jerk reaction. When you point out how evil, wretched, and disgusting Muhammad is, what do they always do? Whataboutism. Oh, well, your prophet in the Bible did X, Y, and Z. Yeah, once again, Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We don't look at them as moral exemplars like you do. So basically, the whole video is nothing more than a tu quoque fallacy. For those who don't know, the tu quoque fallacy is when you go, you also. So if I catch David, stealing from the cookie jar, I say, hey, you shouldn't be stealing from the cookie jar. And he says, yeah, well, you did it when you were a kid. That doesn't mean what David did is okay. That's the tu quoque fallacy. And you also is basically what it means. So that's all this video is. It's a one giant tu quoque fallacy.
And it's extremely. They'll actually combine the tu quoque fallacy with not understanding that it's two completely different scenarios. So one, you were talking about your moral pattern of conduct who has Allah's stamp of approval on the things that he did. And so everything is being confirmed as the will of Allah, and it justifies these kinds of actions. Whereas someone in the Bible doing something is not the same thing. One, it's not coming from our pattern of conduct. Two, it doesn't mean it's justified. The Bible over and over and over again condemns people for doing things in the Bible. So their mindset is just weird. Their mindset is if someone in the Quran did it, then it's good, and you can't, no one can complain about it. Likewise, if someone in the Bible did something that a Christian can't complain, are you insane? The Bible condemns David for having his friend killed in order to cover up his affair. The Bible condemns him. So, following their reasoning, we could never condemn killing a man to cover up an adultery because David did it in the Bible. We can never say anything about it. You can't say anything about it because it's in the Bible. So there's that problem that they don't seem to understand, that because someone did something in the Bible does not mean that the Bible is affirming it or that we're supposed to affirm it. That would make zero sense. You could not have a coherent view of the Bible and maintain that position. Yet they saddle us with that. And on top of everything else, so you pointed out it's a fallacy. Two, it's not even the same scenario. It's not even the same scenario. We're not talking about our moral authority doing something and us affirming it. We're talking about people that are called and exposed as sinners in the Bible. That's a completely different situation. They're not the same thing. So when they say what about in whataboutism, what about, it's not even the same thing. And then the final problem is they can't stop lying. They can't stop lying. So they're not even getting it right.
Sources right.
Yeah, and they're saying, but this is in the Bible, and it's not in the Bible. so it's if it were in the Bible. One, if it were in the Bible, it would be a fallacy, because if it's in the Bible that someone had sex with a little girl and your prophet that does not make it okay for your prophet to have sex with a little girl. You still have to defend your prophet having sex with a little girl and explain it. Worst case scenario, we would have to explain it too. You would have to explain and justify it. We would have to explain and justify it. So one, it's a fallacy. Two, they're not even getting the fallacy right. It's fallacious reasoning, and they can't even get that right to say that we have the same problem, because it's not the same problem, because it's not our moral authority or our pattern of conduct doing this thing. We don't have to affirm it just because someone in the Bible did. We can condemn it when someone in the Bible does it. And then finally, of course, is that they're not even getting that right because they're just making stuff up and can't read words off a page. This is so ridiculous that we have to spend the rest of our lives. Here's what puberty is. No. That's not what your prophet said. Your prophet didn't say that. Here's what your prophet said. We have to teach you what your religion teaches. Oh, no. That's not what your Quran says. We have to teach you what the Quran says. No, you can't interpret it like that. Let us show you why you can't interpret it like that. It's like we have to explain everything to 5-year-olds. And then we have to go through the Bible and expose all their lies. And we have to do this for the rest of our lives because they just can't stop.
According to the church, Mary herself was between 13 and 14 years old when she had Jesus.
According to the church, the church, I don't even know why I'm stopping this. I wanted to watch.
She gave birth to him. How old was Joseph according to the church? He was in his 90s.
Oh, says it right there on the screen, IP. Says that Joseph was in the 90s. All right.
Why are you hypocritical when you talk about Islam?
We're hypocritical because Joseph was in his 90s.
When the age difference is even greater than the age of Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Aisha.
So that last point he was saying was the age difference. If Joseph is in his 90s, which he claims is what Christianity teaches, that Joseph was in his 90s and that Mary was between 12 and 14, the age difference was even bigger than between Muhammad and Aisha, and therefore we're hypocrites if we call out Muhammad. So
the Jewish tradition, the age of marriage, and this comes from Genesis.
This comes
21
from
and 22.
This comes from Genesis 21 and 22, ladies and gentlemen. And you know it because he's got a big old Bible there. Unfortunately, he's not going to show us. They never do. They say it. Yes, it's in Genesis. And you're supposed to say 22 and 24. But you don't want to say that because then people might read 24. But all right, well, let's go.
Where Isaac marries Rebekah at the age of 40 years old. But how old was Rebekah? Well, according here to Genesis 21 and 22, we find that Rebekah was only 3 years old. And this is confirmed by all rabbinic scholars. This is
all rabbinic scholars agree. Hey, I mean, look at his face. How many lies are in this one video? All right, let's see.
Why the law in Judaism for marriage begins at 3 years old.
This dude is nuts. The standard position is 12 as a minimum. All right, IP. So let's. We went through all of it, guys. You get it. You get what we're dealing with here. And this is like every old Dawa guy, every new Dawa guy. They all develop this sudden urge to defend child marriage,
And they immediately lose all their brain cells doing it because they always bring up the dumbest and the worst arguments possible in order to defend child marriage. So they become evil and dumb at the same time. I don't understand.
Yeah, think about how many problems there are with the Muslim Cowboy. One, he has everything he's saying about puberty is factually false from a medical and biological perspective. What he's saying is wrong. It's wrong. His definition of what a woman is wrong. This isn't a matter of opinion. Him saying that a girl who reaches puberty, who has any sign of puberty, is therefore a fully grown woman, that's idiotic and insane and evil. And so there's that. Then there's him not understanding what his own sources say about Muhammad and Aisha, that she hadn't reached puberty and that Islam allows you to have sex before puberty. And finally, he defends it by attacking the Bible and apparently lying, unless he's illiterate and can't read the book that he holds up. So multiple problems.
To be fair, he did not say with Mary it's according to the Bible that she was between 12 and 14. He says according to the church. Yeah. And I'm guessing he's going off the Catholic tradition, which shows you he's not even making a good comparison. Because, yes, in the Catholic Church tradition, Mary conceives between 12 and 14. However, Joseph is not marrying her because he's another Muhammad who wants to bang her. He's this old man who's given to her as like to protect her so she can be a perpetual virgin. If you're going to attack the Catholic Church, don't just take out the teachings you like, because they teach Mary was a perpetual virgin. So she never had sex with Joseph. Joseph was more like a protector for her so that she could be this blessed gift from God and that Jesus could come through her, and then she remains a virgin until she dies. So if you're going to attack the Catholic doctrines, at least get them right. This is not comparable to Muhammad, who sexually abused Aisha. Okay, that didn't happen with Joseph and Mary in the Catholic tradition.
According to the church, Mary herself was...
He puts a source up on the screen. According to the church, Mary herself
between 13 and 14 years old when she had Jesus.
He links to a website. So he doesn't, not a Bible verse, not some authoritative, nothing. He links to a website. So here we go. Crosswalk.com.
Oh man.
Crosswalk.com by Whitney Hopler. Whitney Hopler. Contributing writer Whitney Hopler. This is what he put on the screen as his source. When we say, hey, we're not aware of any reliable source on the age of Mary, what's your source? He went to this website. The Virgin Mary, who served as the mother of Jesus on earth, is known for her spiritual maturity. She inspires many people through her example of faith and trust in God. In art, Mother Mary is often portrayed as a fully grown woman. But how old was Mary when she had Jesus really? Mary was actually a young teen when she gave birth to Jesus, historians believe. Just how young? Historians agree that Mary was most likely between 12 and 14 years old when Jesus was born. So there you have it. There's a website by Whitney Hopler. Whitney Hopler says, historian, but notice it's not just Whitney Hopler saying this. It's Whitney Hopler saying, historians agree that Mary was most likely between 12 and 14 years old when Jesus was born. That's interesting because the most common thing I've seen, IP, is historians saying we don't know how old she was. And
Yes.
what I have seen is I'll frequently see things like she could have been as young as 12 to 14 because that's when rabbis would allow someone to get married, right? Before, if you were under 12, the rabbi was not going to do it. And so they say, okay, well, here's when she could have been married. And it looks like Whitney here is concluding that therefore they're saying she was between 12 and 14. But this is so far our only source saying that Mary was 13 or 14 when she had Jesus, according to the Muslim Cowboy.
So this is a paper written by Amram Trooper, a scholar that actually looked at this. And on the basis of rabbinic sources and ancient documents, scholars suggest the average age of first marriage in Palestine in the Western Diaspora was in the late teens or early 20s for women and around 30 for men. And
Wait. Go back. The average age of first marriage, late teens or early 20s for women and around 30 for men. Now, this is, didn't Daniel make it sound like basically before the 20th century, everyone's, it's like 9-year-old boys marrying 5-year-old girls left and right?
Yeah, he sure did because he has not studied anything.
Okay, so it's like they decide what they want to be true in order to justify their fake prophet, and then they just say it, and it never crosses their mind to actually do the research that you managed to do for them, fortunately.
Yeah, if you go down to the footnote, you can see her sources here. And she also notes Tim Parkin argues, however, that this age differential would probably not have translated into a significant difference in fertility due to the likelihood that the experience of childbirth for a mother in her early teens would lead to, I forget how to say this word.
Deleterious,
that's it, thank you, effects that would eventually decrease her fecundity. So right there we see that ancient people, Tim Parkin is basically suggesting ancient people were not stupid. They knew a 12-year-old was not equipped yet to have a child. You got to wait for her hips to widen and for her to finish puberty before they're ready to have children and then raise them. So we see this in the ancient world. They were pushing it closer to late teens because of this. And again, other research shows that in this period, girls were not even hitting their period till around the age of 16. So we wouldn't see 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds being married off in masses.
Yeah, which, by the way, is Aisha was in her mid-teens. According to Muslim sources, Aisha was in her mid-teens. She didn't reach puberty at 9. She was in her mid-teens when she reached puberty.
Michael Sallow's book is on screen. All right, so with this one, again, he says it could have been Palestine, Western Diaspora, could have been mid or late teens. So same kind of roughly thing. Girls were not really marrying until basically they had started the age of menarche, which would be past 16. He notes that when Muslims go to the Talmud to cite these ages, he says the rabbis, we have to assume, knew that their ideal ages for marriages did not correspond to what they typically saw around them. So sometimes you'll see rabbis talking about girls, the ideal age for a girl to marry being 12. That's not a reflection of what was actually happening in Jewish culture. They were marrying later. So he actually points out that there's a huge difference when a rabbi says an ideal age versus what was actually happening. And he lists some examples here. Like he cites, for example, this one text. I believe it was Philo, a 20-year-old Jewish woman from Egypt who died while apparently betrothed, is described as ripe for marriage, like a rose in a garden. So we see this idea that in the Jewish text, he notes that girls had to wait until they were older, closer to the age of 20, in their late teens. And they also had to, he notes they had to actually agree to it. So you couldn't marry a girl off against her will. She had to be mature enough, and she had to want it. So Rabbi Eleazar said it is forbidden for a man to betroth his daughter while she is a minor until she marries and says, I want so-and-so. So right there we see you cannot marry a minor, and she has to agree to it. So they have to be able to consent, and they have to be of age.
Interesting. There's no reliable source on the age of Mary, right? There's no reliable source. But you have had people point out that you could be married between the age of 12 and 14. And so the assumption is, well, if you could be married then, it's not like they're going to wait a long time. And therefore, some would think, well, Mary was probably married in one of those ages. And so you end up with people spreading it around. Hey, it says you can marry between the age of 12 and 14. Therefore, most likely Mary was born during that time. And you're pointing out, no, people have actually done the research on available documents and concluded that even though you were allowed legally to do it, when were people actually getting married? Somewhere around the age of 20 is when they were actually getting married. So in reality, so here's what was allowed and here's what was actually the case. And so if you were trying to assess, hey, how old was Mary? Yes, you could have taken into account, well, you were allowed to get married at 12. And so that would be kind of minimum age if this was going to be allowed during that time, minimum of 12. But since you have nothing else to go on, you'd have to say, okay, we'll just go with the average age of first marriage, and go with that. And you're pointing out that would be around 20, not around 12.
Yeah, late teens, you could say 18, I'd say. But yeah, some women were waiting till 20, though. So that is for sure. And even the Catholic Encyclopedia that has a entry on St. Joseph says the sources on his age and Mary's age, these come from late, unreliable Apocrypha texts. So it directly says that even the early Christian sources that try to calculate Mary and Joseph's age, they're not reliable. So we got to go on what the current scholarship shows. And if you look at what Michael Satlow and Amram Trooper have argued, you're getting late teens to early 20s, not this 12-year-old child bride who, again, would still have been a perpetual virgin if the Catholic tradition is right.
So can we say that historians agree that Mary was between 12 and 14? Can we say we'd have to see a source from that? Because when we actually look it up, what we actually see from scholars is, yes, it's possible to marry between 12 and 14. But those who have actually done the research say, no, the average age was older. And so you basically have nothing to go on. That yet she could have been married at this time. It would be allowed. You have you have zero reason to think it was right when she was 12 or right when she was 13 or even right when she was 14, because it was common for even women in their first marriage to wait to 18 or 20.
And that's in Palestine. In Babylon, both Trooper and Satlow say it was younger. So you could have girls marrying 12, 14 more on average. But again, a lot of the times the Muslim apologists will go to the Babylonian Talmud to support this. They don't realize there was actually a different practice happening in Palestine.
Mm-hmm. So what we have is him saying, nope, Mary was 13 or 14 when she had Jesus. There's no source on this. The only source he gives is a website which is saying something false, that historians agree on this, and they don't. They most certainly do not. That is false. It is false that historians agree on this. So, and for Muslims who won't get this point, Muslims, if I said something about Islam and I could not show it to you from the Quran, I couldn't show it to you from the Hadith, I couldn't show it to you in the tafsir, I couldn't show it to you in the seerah, and all I had to go on was a website from someone no one has ever heard of. And I said, this website says it. Therefore, that's what Islam teaches. And I can't show you Again, from the Quran, from the Hadith, from the Sirah, from the Tafsir. I can't show you it in any authentic Muslim source. It's just someone makes a claim on a website without offering the slightest bit of evidence for it. Would you accept that as authoritative Islamic teaching? The answer is no. Not one of you would ever do that, would ever accept that as authoritative teaching if I can't show it to you from an actual authentic source. Why do people like the Muslim Cowboy instantly turn around and say, nope, I found it on a website. Who cares if it contradicts everything we actually know? It's on a website. I want to compare that with what we do. When we say Aisha was 9, are we saying we saw this on a website somewhere and it's not something that actually appears in any authentic Muslim source, but we saw it on a website and therefore we're just going to say it over and over again? No, what do? We go, oh, look, Sahih al-Bukhari, chapter, giving one's young children in marriage is permissible. Why? By virtue, what? Young children? No, I didn't say child marriage. Yoo-hoo, says it right there. Young children. By virtue of the statement of Allah, and for those who have no monthly courses, no monthly period, i.e. they are still immature, Surah 65:4, and the iddah, that's the waiting period after you divorce a girl, for the girl before puberty, so this is divorcing a girl you've had sex with before she's ever reached puberty, is 3 months. And then as an example of this, 51:33, narrated Aisha that the Prophet wrote the marriage contract with her when she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old, and then she remained with him for 9 years old, i.e. till his death. And some Muslims, oh, maybe that's the only one. No, what about this? 51:34, 6 years old, 9 years old. Oh, what about this? Also Sahih al-Bukhari, 6 years old, 9 years old. Oh, what's this? Bukhari. Hey, look at here. Narrated Aisha, I used to play with dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's messenger used to enter my dwelling place, they would hide themselves, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. The playing with dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at that time as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty. Are we just saying, are we just getting this from a website, ladies and gentlemen? Are we just saying, oh, I saw this on a website, so I'll just say it. No. Sahih Muslim, Prophet married me when I was 6 years old, consummated the marriage with me when I was 9 years old. How old was she? Oh, look here, 9 years old. Oh, look here. Also, Sahih Muslim, 9 years old. Aisha in Sunan Abu Dawud 21:21. The Messenger of Allah, this is Aisha speaking. The Messenger of Allah married me when I was a girl of 7 years. Suleiman, one of the translators said, or 6. And he consummated the marriage when I was a girl of 9. Sunan An-Nasai. The Messenger of Allah married me when I was 6 and consummated the marriage with me when I was 9. And I used to play with dolls. It's relevant to be playing with dolls. Why? Because you could only do that if you hadn't reached puberty. History about Tabari. How old was she? Look at the end. On the day he consummated the marriage with her, she was 9 years old. What happens when we make a claim? When we make a claim about Aisha, we give you source after source after source after source that you Muslims treat as your most reliable sources of information on the life of Muhammad. And we show that this is all over the place. And we challenge you, show us something that says otherwise. Show us a different date. When we say Aisha was 9, what are we basing that on? We're basing it on repeated over and over again like a beating drum claims in your most trusted sources on the life of Muhammad. When you say Mary was 13 or Mary was 14, where are you getting that from? A website, because you don't actually have a source. There's no reliable source on the age of Mary.
If they actually look, they'll find Apocrypha texts, which the Catholic Encyclopedia says are unreliable. So even scholars today, Christian scholars will say, these are not reliable accounts on the actual age of Mary when Jesus was born.
And as you pointed out earlier, those sources are attempting to explain why Mary never had sex.
Yes.
So there's nothing to do with sex there. There's no sex taking place. In those sources that say that Mary was young and Joseph was old, those sources are saying that Joseph was just taking care of her as someone would take care of a daughter, and that he wasn't interested in sex, and so that's it. That's the reason. And so, guys, notice, and in addition to all that, suppose, hypothetically, that Joseph had married Mary when she was like 5. and consummated the marriage at 5. The Muslim Cowboy seems to think that we would therefore go, oh, well, if Joseph did it, then it must be good. And it must be the rule today. And it's okay for everyone to go around banging 5-year-olds because Joseph did it. No, we would say Joseph was wrong. If he had done it, we would say Joseph was wrong. Guys, let's be clear. Joseph is not our pattern of conduct in Christianity. Somehow this is all supposed to compare with Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl. So that, notice that's the second point. Oh, she was 13 or 14. Wait, so several years older than 9, right? So significantly older than 9. And he puts a source up on the screen. Historians say she was 12 to 14. No, historians say you were allowed to get married at 12 to 14. What does that mean? It means that Muhammad wouldn't even have been allowed to marry Aisha when she was that young. Wouldn't have been allowed. So even if we were to grant, which we wouldn't because there's no reliable source, but even if we said, you know what, this website says that she was 12 to 14, and by golly, we're just going to believe anything this website says without any source, without any documentary evidence at all. We're just going to believe whatever this site says. Okay, so she would be several years older than Aisha was when Muhammad was having sex with her, and significantly older than what people like Daniel Hakikachu and the Muslim Cowboy say is allowed, because they think it's okay to have sex with a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old, as long as there are signs of puberty. And so they're comparing a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old to a 13 or 14-year-old. Guys, there's an extra 1 on there. You're in double digits. There's a big difference between single digits and double digits. So even if we granted whatever we read on any Christian site is authoritative doctrine for Christians, even if we did grant that, hey, she would be in double digits, worst case scenario. Mary was in double digits as opposed to Aisha, who was in single digits. And then, so we can point all of that out. We can point all of that out. So again, Joseph is not the same. Joseph in Christianity is not the same thing as Muhammad in Islam. He's not a pattern of conduct. If he did something, we would call him a sinner. 2, even if we go with the website that you have no real source for, even if we go with the website, she was 13 or 14, that's double digits. That's significantly older than Aisha. And 3, we have no reason to think that that's actually true. We have no reason to think that she was actually 13 or 14. None. If we just went with the average age of marriage back then, average age of first marriage, she would have been somewhere around 18 or 20.
How old was Joseph according to the church? He was in his 90s.
Uh-oh. Shouldn't have put the source on the screen. Hey, Muslim Cowboy. Shouldn't have put the source up on the screen, because when you put the source up on the screen, you allow us the ability to go to the source and expose you, sir, as a great big liar. Why isn't he quoting our sources? Why is he going to websites? Because he doesn't have a source for anything he's saying here except websites. That's his level of research in Dawah. But IP. All right, guys, everyone see this up here? You can see part of the quotation. And so I was actually able to track down the source here. So you see there, and as old as 36 to 42, he focuses on that 90s part. See right there, he says 90s, and then he puts it on the screen so that people won't actually look at the words on the page that he is cropping. And they'll just assume that he's telling the truth. Very interesting methodology. Now let's go to this actual article here. This is the article. So this one is by Daniel Isaiah Joseph. Joseph may have been as young as 18 to 20 and as old as 36 to 42 when he married Mary. Since the Bible doesn't mention how old he was, it may be possible to use specific historical and cultural factors to estimate an age range. Also, some unsupported traditions imply that Joseph was in his 80s or 90s. This was his source that he put on the screen to say. Does
he read?
It seems like a problem, doesn't it? So guys, what's this say? He put this on the screen where people can see 90s, and he emphasized 90s. And he said, that's what this source is saying, according to the church. What does even the article that he went to say? Joseph may have been as young as 18 to 20 and as old as 36 to 42 when he married Mary. Since the Bible doesn't mention how old he was, it may be possible to use specific historical details and cultural factors to estimate an age range. Also, some unsupported traditions imply that Joseph was in his 80s or 90s. Unsupported traditions imply. They're unsupported traditions according to this. And he states it as a fact that according to the church, Joseph was in his 90s. So going with what it actually says, this is hilarious. Going with what his source, he cited this as his source. He can't give an actual authoritative source. This guy gets all his information from websites. Why does he go to these websites? Because he searches through websites to find what he's looking for. To say something that, oh, now I can use this. Yeehaw! Right? What does this source actually say? So if you go with these unsupported traditions and you factor that into the age range, Joseph was somewhere between 18 and his 90s. IP.
Got him. That's it.
Based on the information available to us, Joseph was somewhere between 18 and his 90s. Does this guy have one drop? I mean, a drop of integrity anywhere in his body? Guys, just to recap, if you're wondering, well, why are there these unsupported traditions? Okay. So what the Bible says is Mary was a virgin and had Jesus. And then the Bible talks about Mary and Joseph, and it mentions brothers and sisters of Jesus. Brothers and sisters of Jesus. So it's if you're reading that, you would probably get the idea that Mary and Joseph had other children after Jesus was born. So they had other kids. They had other kids. So that's how Jesus had. They would have all been his half sisters and half brothers, but that's the impression you would get. Okay, so she was a virgin when they had Jesus, but then there were other brothers. There were brothers and sisters. So what does that suggest? So what you find is later Catholic apologists who are defending Mary's perpetual virginity. They're being asked, well, why wouldn't a guy have sex with Mary and why wouldn't they have more children after Jesus? Why? What's the point? And so they have to try to explain it, and they come up with stories. But Joseph was a really, really old man who, treated her like a daughter, and there was no sex. Mm-hmm. And these things are made up. These things are made up. So notice even Catholics don't take those sources seriously because even Catholics look at those. And according to, you pointed out, the Catholic Encyclopedia says these are not reliable sources. So Catholics don't treat them as reliable. No one. There's not one person on the planet who treats these late sources as reliable. And just so everyone knows, Catholics interpret the passages about. I have seen some say that the brothers and sisters refer to cousins and so on. It's more common to say that Joseph had children. That Joseph had children before he married Mary, and so these were Joseph's children from a previous marriage. But anyway, the point here is, where are you getting the idea that Joseph is in his 90s? Well, it says right here that there are unsupported traditions implying that. Can we trust those unsupported traditions? No, no one does. Christians don't. They don't at all. I've never met a Christian who trusts these traditions. And he's stating it as authoritative fact. We are 10 seconds into this video. And the 2 points that he has made. The church teaches she was 13 to 14. What's your source? A website that doesn't understand what historians are actually saying. And Joseph was in his 90s. According to what? What's your source? An article that doesn't even say that. The article says between 18 and 42. That's what the article that you put on the screen says. This is awful. This is awful. This is the first 10 seconds of his video that's supposed to refute us. But let's keep going here. He says this in Genesis
21 and 22, we find that Rebekah was only 3 years old. And this is confirmed by all
Problem, Rebekah isn't even mentioned in Genesis 21. Not even mentioned in Genesis 21. He says this in Genesis 21. Whoa, look, did you see this? Watch what he said right here. All rabbinic. So let's go
all
back.
of them? You
and
sure
this
about
is confirmed
that?
by all rabbinic scholars. This is why the law in Judaism for marriage begins at 3 years old. According to the
Okay, so three completely
Wow.
false claims there. One, that this is in the Bible. It's in Genesis 21 to 22. Again, Rebecca is not even mentioned in Genesis 21. She's first mentioned in Genesis 22, right? And then you get the actual account of her in Genesis 24. It mentions her just to introduce her name, because she's going to appear later in Genesis 24. So he claims that this is in the Bible, that she's three. He claims that this is the consensus position of all rabbis. All rabbis agree on this. And that the age of marriage, according to Judaism, is 3. Lie. IP, did he say anything that is correct? Did he get anything right there?
No, it's all nonsense. I don't even know if he can read. Like, honest, I'm questioning if he can, because he's just flipping through pages and he says it's right here in Genesis 21 and 22. As you pointed out, it's not in Genesis 21, and in Genesis 22 it doesn't mention her age. He does not understand the actual rabbinic commentary, what's actually happening, and where this idea actually came from in later Talmudic and Mishnah type texts.
There's no age given for Rebekah here. You have to kind of piece it together and say, oh, so-and-so was this age, and when this person was this age, and when that person was this age, then so-and-so was this age. You have to try to piece it together. You can't piece it together without completely misreading this part in Genesis 22. So you have to misread this part, or you can't get 3. You have to read this in a certain very, very strange way. Well, let's go ahead and see it. So Genesis 22, this is about the sacrifice of Isaac. So this is the story of Abraham and Isaac. I have a pretty detailed video going through this passage. And then at the end, so we'll start at verse 19. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham lived at Beersheba. Now, after these things, it was...
That's key right there, verse 20.
Yeah. After these things, it was told to Abraham. So Abraham gets news from home. Why? Well, he moved a long way from home. How do you know? This isn't like today where you could call someone on your cell phone. This isn't like today where you can email someone. You didn't even have like something like the Pony Express sending letters back. So you're not even sending letters. You don't have it. You don't have the U.S. Postal Service. You would eventually hear news from home after you've been because some travelers or some traders would come from some other area, and you say, wait. You came from where? Oh, is there any news for how things are going for my family that I haven't heard from for 10 years? What's going on back home? I haven't seen them in such a long time. Give me some news. So Abraham is told how things are going back home. Now, after these things, it was told to Abraham, behold, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel fathered Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Reumah, bore Teba, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah. So, how are you getting an age for Rebekah here? How are you getting an age? Go ahead.
The rabbinic sources claim that this is the year Rebekah was born. As you can see, it's not in the text. Yeah. These are just later conjectures made by rabbis that this is the same year Rebekah is born. Then they go to the next chapter and it says when Sarah died. Now, what they claim, again, conjecture, not supported, way too speculative, probably false. They claim that the reason Sarah died is because she was so distraught by seeing Isaac taken up on the mountain and almost killed that she basically died. Again, not accurate, because Genesis 22 says Abraham and Isaac had walked for like 3 days away from where they were staying. So Sarah is nowhere near. But this is later rabbinic conjecture trying to calculate these ages. Based on that, they say, well, Rebekah had to be 3 because just after Abraham sends his servant, and it'd be about 3 years or so. But all conjecture, all nonsense, all made up by far later rabbis who just made error after error here. And this is why you just can't take everything they say as if it's a dogma.
So a rabbi misread this and passed it on to others. And as opposed to what our good friend, the Muslim Cowboy, claimed, no, this is not the consensus position. You have multiple positions on the age of Rebekah. The claim that she was 3 is based on a clear misunderstanding of this text. The text is not saying this. So the reasoning, again, and that's why everyone needs to become familiar with this. The reasoning here that some rabbi actually thought, and which is what every Muslim Dawah guy uses now. Every Muslim Dawah guy does the exact same thing. And they insist that since a rabbi said this, we all have to say the same thing. We all have to agree. No, we don't. If we think someone is reading the text in a stupid fashion and has committed an obvious blunder and misunderstanding, we do not have to. I mean, IP, this is so insane. If a rabbi says it, you have to agree with it. No, I do not. I would look at his reasoning. If he can show me how he's getting this, I would be happy to agree with him. He can't, because this is stupid. It's stupid to read this like this. So guys, I'm saying it here. If a rabbi reads this passage and concludes that this is the moment Rebekah was born, which is what was concluded, that's stupid. That is a stupid, not because it has, I'm not even talking about morally. I'm talking about reading the text. This is a stupid way to read the text. So the claim is, since this is when Genesis mentions Rebekah, this means Rebekah was born right then, right? Since that's when Abraham heard about Rebekah, right? So look at what is actually said. Milcah has also borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo. Since Abraham is hearing about all these men for the first time, does that mean they're all born right then, right now when he hears about them? No, one of the people who's mentioned is Bethuel, who fathered Rebekah. Does that mean that Bethuel was born at the same time as his daughter was born? No one would conclude that. You'd have to be absolutely insane or really, really sloppy at reading. And yet the Muslim defense is, since Rebekah is mentioned here, this is exactly when she was born.
Yeah, and if you do the math, I mean, Abraham was pretty old. We don't really know Abraham's age, but he would still be pretty old because Isaac's birth was miraculous. Nahor would have had multiple children at this point. Those children would have been having children as well. So Nahor could probably have had multiple grandchildren at this point. Rebekah is probably much older at this point based on that, because again, so much time has elapsed. And this is why I talked about Abraham having a child in his old age. You're talking about someone much older, not someone who's a young strutting cowboy out there who's only 30 or something. And so Nahor's children are not just having children at that point. They're probably also approaching adulthood or in their adulthood at that point.
Yeah. So does this passage that is cited, because keep in mind, it's the Muslim Cowboy says, if you just read Genesis 21 to 22, that's where it says Rebekah was 3. Yee-hoo! This is the only place in Genesis 21 to 22 that mentions Rebekah. Is this saying how old she was? No, it's saying Abraham heard news from home about all these people who were born. It gives the name of the men. It mentions Rebekah only because it's about to go into the story of Rebekah 2 chapters later. Are you getting an age for Rebekah here? The Muslim Cowboy says yes, clearly she was 3. Not what the text says. It says this is when Abraham heard about his family back home. Mm-hmm. That's it. So
yeah, and what they'll try to do is they'll try to play with the ages, and they'll say, well, if Sarah died at this age, then Isaac married at this age, they'll try to do these mathematical calculations based on the ages in Genesis. So, but that doesn't work because again, notice the time gap in verse 20. Now, after these things, it was told to Abraham. That could have been a year. That could have been 10 years. We're not told. And it also doesn't say when Rebekah was born. It just says Abraham heard about these people, unspecifying the years they were born.
Yeah, she's clearly not very old because she's called young woman, and as we're about to see. As far as this is concerned, she could be 30 years old. As far as this text is concerned, she could be 1 year old. She could be 30 years old. This text does not say, it's just he heard news from back home. That's it. That's what it's saying. He's been gone a long time. A lot of stuff happened while he was gone, and he hears news about who his relatives are that he didn't know about. They tell him, he finds out about Rebekah. How are you getting an age here? You can't. And yet the Muslim cowboy will insist, dogmatically insist, that since a later rabbi said, well, this must have been when she was born, therefore we're all bound by this, and this is the consensus opinion. Idiotic, insane nonsense from the Dawa clowns, as we always get. But notice, once again, IP. Suppose we opened up this Bible and we found, and Isaac had sex with Rebekah when she was 3. That's what happened. Would we say, oh, therefore it's okay to have sex with a 3-year-old girl because it says that Isaac did it? Is that what we would say?
Nope.
Oh, so we don't take Isaac as a sinless moral authority who's the pattern of conduct for all future generations?
I have never heard one Christian theologian, pastor, and you name it, ever say such a nonsensical thing. Only people I hear say that are the Dawagandas.
Yep.
Real quick, let me just put this up here because he said all the rabbinic scholars agree. No, they don't.
Okay, let's get that. All right.
If you read here up on the side on this commentary, it says this. Rashi's comment on this apparently historically irrelevant detail is that the Torah informed us that Isaac, after marrying Rebekah, waited for 3 years until she was old enough to engage in intercourse and became pregnant. In his commentary on Genesis 24, Rabbi Kasher in his Torah Shalema deals at length with the conflicting opinions about Rebekah's age at marriage.
Wait,
so
conflicting opinions? I thought it was a consensus that she was 3.
No, apparently there's conflicting opinions, and you would know this if you read Muslim Cowboy.
So there are conflicting opinions?
Oh yeah. Oh, some say 14. I mean,
you've got 14. You've got 14 on the screen. It says it right there, 14.
Yeah. Some thought it was 14. Some thought it was 3.
Yeah, and some said 10.
Mm-hmm.
And so you haven't, and notice, some say 3, some say 10, some say 14. Why? Because they don't know. There is no source. And so they're all trying to piece together some sort of argument based on how old she was. Because why? Why don't they have an actual age like they have for like Abraham? Abraham was this many years old. Sarah was this many years old. Why don't they have Rebekah was this many years old? Because it doesn't say. And so you can kind of make an argument for anything you want. You can say she's 20. You can say she's 25. You can say she's 14. You can say she's 10. You can say she's 3. You could say anything you want. The question is, do you have a good argument? And I would say you have a terrible, terrible, ridiculous, absurd argument that she was 3. It's ridiculous. You can only get it. You only get it by completely butchering the end of Genesis 22. You have to be misreading this. But what is definitely false, what is definitely indisputably false, is that there's a consensus of rabbis. That's what he says. It's the position of all rabbis that she was 3. And just what you have on the screen here shows that's false. This is a translation of Seder Olam. Down to the bottom there, you start getting, and the meeting of Sodom, 51 years. From then, peace and quiet was on her, Sarah, and on her sons for 23 years. Okay. And they're trying to piece together the dates here, trying to piece together the dates of things. And look right here, Genesis 21. And Abraham sojourned, the middle of the page there, and Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines many days. These days were more numerous than the ones of Hebron, which were 25 years. So these ones were 26 years. In this chapter, Rebekah was born. We find that our father Isaac married Rebekah when she was 14 years old. When she was 14 14 years old. When she was, what, 3 that all rabbis agree on? No, that she was 14 years old. This is what we're dealing with, man. This is what we're dealing with. And this is the problem.
Will
Because
they ever correct themselves?
no,
Or is
no,
it more important
no.
for them to look strong and stupid than just admit they're wrong?
Yeah, they refuse to admit they're wrong. They would regard that as weakness. Any one of his followers can do what we just did. Oh, he said this, let's look it up. Oh, he said that, let's look it up. Oh, he said that, let's actually look up the passage. Anyone can do that and find out that he's lying. Not one of them will do it. And if you make them do it, not one of them will care. Not one of his followers will care. That's what we're up against. Liars who know they can lie with impunity because their followers just do not care.
Least we can do, because the Dawa guys are not going to listen to anyone other than what their sheikhs basically tell them, is to equip you guys, the people that are actually listening, with the actual data, so you can go out and just show how incredibly stupid these arguments are. Because, again, Muslim Cowboy is equipping his followers to look like idiots when they go up against our followers. They will just look absolutely befuddled, because they'll be saying the Bible says Rebekah was 3, and they'll get corrected on it by people who actually have read the Bible.
Genesis 24. This is where you actually get a description of Rebekah. So Abraham wants his servant to find a bride for Isaac, but he doesn't want one of the local pagans. He doesn't want one of the local pagans. He wants someone from back home. So verse 10. Genesis 24. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time when women go out to draw water. What? The time when toddlers go out to draw water? The time when little 3-year-olds go out to draw water? No, the time when women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman, wait, he's looking for a young woman as a bride? I thought he was looking for a 3-year-old. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. So he asks for a sign from heaven about who he's supposed to get as a bride for Isaac. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. The young woman was very attractive. Wait, the what? The toddler was very attractive? The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. What does maiden mean? It means young woman. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden, not a toddler. Not a toddler. And by the way, it's, you could say, oh, look, your toddler is so adorable or something like that. Very weird to be speaking about attractive in the sense of like a woman being attractive. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. So she goes out at the time when women go out to draw water. The young woman, he asked about a young woman. He's praying to God about a young woman. So he's looking for a young woman. And he asked God to show him which of the young women God has selected for Isaac. And then we read, the young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your jar. This was his test. She said, drink, my lord. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink, because they would carry water jars on their shoulders. That's what women would do, not toddlers, because a big jar full of water is pretty heavy. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. Not just I'm going to give them a little sip. I'm going to give your camels water until they are stuffed, until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water. And she drew for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. Notice, if this was a 3-year-old getting all this water for camels, he would have been gazing at her, wondering how she has superpowers. So she draws water for 10 camels. She draws water for 10 camels. Young woman draws water for 10 camels. Oval-shaped blood cells allow camels to consume large amounts of water. This is what pops up first. Up to 30 gallons in one sitting. So let's say 20 gallons per camel. So this little girl carried 200 gallons of water. This little girl carried 200 gallons of water. A 3-year-old. A 3-year-old carried 200 gallons of water, according to the Muslim Cowboy. Yeehaw!
Well, he didn't read that part. He didn't read any of it. So how would he have known that? Come on. He's just looking at the Bible with the pretty pictures.
Yeah, guys, Abraham told his servant what he's looking for in a bride for his son Isaac. And the servant prays to God for guidance and gets the sign he was asking for. So when the Muslim Cowboy says, hey, she was 3 years old, he's saying that God, he's saying this is the Muslim Cowboy, saying that God is okay with grown men having sex with 3-year-olds. The Muslim Cowboy, why is he saying all this? He's trying to convince people that it's okay to have sex with a 3-year-old. That God wants grown men to have sex with 3-year-old girls. That the prophet Abraham, whom they claim to respect, sent his servant to find a toddler as a bride for his son. And that Isaac penetrated a 3-year-old girl. These are men who claim to respect, like Muslim Cowboy and the Dawa guys. These are men who claim to respect God. They claim to respect Abraham. They claim to respect Isaac. They claim to respect Mary. They claim to respect all of these figures. And they say, oh, we respect them more than you. Okay, show us how you respect them. We're going to call all of them pedophiles. Ha-ha! That's how we show our respect. When we show our respect by saying you're a pedophile. Hey, you're a pedophile. That's how we say you're a great person. Isn't this insane? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, once again, that's what we're dealing with in Dawa. We're dealing with chronic, compulsive liars. This is just the rule. Guys, when they can subjugate you using violence, violence is the go-to method. When they're not in a position to violently subjugate you, it's deceive you. Your view of whether it's okay to have sex with a little girl has real world implications. Why do you guys keep talking about this? Is not simply theoretical stuff. This is not simply a point. This is not simply a point to make fun of Muhammad. There are real world implications that people like. So take someone like Ali Dawi. He says if his daughter gets her first period at the age of 9, he'd tell her she's ready to be married. What if she says, okay, daddy, I'm ready to be married? He's going to pass her off to another Dawa guy for some guy to start banging. And that's what we're responding to.
I mean, people like Daniel Akikachu or even Muslim Cowboy are going to have Muslim fans outside of the U.S. or in places where there are rules that allow you to marry children, unfortunately, because that's the current state of the world. They're going to justify this kind of crap in their desperate attempt to lie to get people to become Muslim. And it's going to cause in hundreds of girls being harmed by disgusting old men that are pedophiles. And they're justifying it all. They're going to pretend that's a good thing. They don't care about the girls. These Muslim dawagandists have never cared about women. That's why they don't understand what marital rape is. And that's why they're promoting child marriage.
If I were to decide to go undercover as an undercover agent and pretend to be a Dawa guy in order to expose Islam from within, I would pretty much act exactly like Daniel Hakikachu acts. Like exactly. I would be exactly like Daniel. If I were trying to destroy Islam from within by pretending to be a Muslim, I would act exactly like Daniel Hakikachu acts. And this is how you expose them. A fan of the Muslim Cowboy says, look, well, Rebekah was 3. I saw the Muslim Cowboy say it. Yeehaw. Okay, show me that. Pull up the article that he was citing. Now let's go through this. And that's you just have to do it. Guys, that's a lot of work. It takes us years to get them to acknowledge something. When they make up something, perfect preservation of the Quran, scientific miracles, when they make something up, it takes us years, sometimes decades to expose it. but you just have to do it anyway. Now, we are to an age where we can actually expose things much faster using the internet, so we want to take advantage of this and destroy the dawah. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.